What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. This is the Science Dispatch Podcast. My name is Cameron English. That handsome young man over there, Dr. Chuck Dinnerstein, Director of Medicine at the American Council on Science and Health. Chuck, it's so good to see you once again.
It's nice to be seeing you, and we have to point out that delightful face in the middle, Joshua Bloom. Dr. Bloom is Director of
Chemical and Pharmaceutical Sciences and Dad Jokes. Doctor of Dad Jokes, I think. I just bestowed that on you. That's not your official title, but Josh makes the funniest dad jokes I think I've ever heard, because most of them are not funny.
Truth to that.
But enough about my father-in-law.
Oh, my God.
All right, so here's how this works. Josh may chime in every once in a while because we just love his valuable insight, but this is an article that Dr. Dinnerstein wrote. This is called The Trouble with, quote, Follow the Science. So, Chuck, here's your summary and then break down the specifics. So you say, scientific guidance isn't carved in stone. It shifts as new evidence reshapes old assumptions. The recent reversal of long-standing hormone therapy warnings highlights how politics, public trust, and evolving data collide, and why follow the science is far more complicated and more vital than the slogan suggests. Okay. What are you trying to say here? This sounds like you're getting kind of controversial, and I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that.
We try to avoid controversy on the employed side of this project. But I would just claim that I was playing with words for the day, and I was very interested in what I've always thought, that science is sometimes treated as a noun, in terms of facts, and is other times treated as a verb, as in terms of the scientific method. And depending upon the situation and the science being looked at is how the various proponents on one side or the other of the issue describe science. In the last few years, follow the science has really been much more do what I tell you than follow a particular scientific method. And I thought it was worth chatting a little bit about that, if only to give a moment's grace to our friend Secretary Kennedy and the fine things that they're coming up with over at HHS. So I think that there's two examples that are really clear of this noun-verb problem, and so fluoride is probably one of those. The facts about fluoride, the nouns about fluoride, have been known for well over 60 years. But as it turns out, while those facts have not changed, the context around the facts have changed. The verb of science has modified what I think maybe we should consider about fluoride now. So what I really mean is, in 1940, brushing your teeth was a new thing for a lot of America. A lot of the recruits in World War II could not enlist in the Army because they did not have 6 pairs of opposable teeth. So that to give you a sense of the dentition that was present in the 30s and 40s. So when fluoride came along and reduced cavities, that was a huge breakthrough. But leave it up to the free market and other forces. Within 3 or 4 years of fluoride getting into the water, Crest toothpaste had found a way to get fluoride into toothpaste. And at this point in time, there are a lot of sources of fluoride besides water. And so fluorosis, which is a real problem that we can see from back in the 40s, which is really causes a discoloration of the enamel of your teeth, may become a greater problem. Whether there's a change in your IQ, I don't even want to get into the problems with that studies and the fact that a 1-point change in your IQ is not going to really check your job opportunities in the long run. But it goes to the point that while the facts are there, the context may have changed. That may have changed the way you weigh those facts, the verb part of science, and come to a different conclusion. The same, I think, is true when they're talking about hormone replacement therapy. And in that case, out of an abundance of caution, there was a signal in some early studies that hormone replacement therapy caused an increased risk of breast cancer. Fast forward 25 years, and now we're starting to see that hormone replacement therapy seems to have a benefit in terms of women's cardiovascular health. Again, when you apply context, when you apply the verb of thinking about what you do with science and the context around it, breast cancer is not anywhere near the problem for women as coronary artery disease. So it's worth considering taking the black box warnings off HRTs, because it seems to provide a benefit now that it didn't present 30 years ago. Not a flip-flop, but that's what science does. When the facts change, you change your mind.
So that's how the process works when it works correctly, I think. And I think in the last few years especially, but for a long time really, politics in various ways has distorted the way that we do science in the U.S. and globally, depending on the issue you're talking about. So can you speak to that at all in terms of like how serious of an impact has that had on our understanding of some of these issues that you're talking about, or maybe other public health issues?
I think that there's another component to it, because a lot of the places where this debate takes place is around public health, and population health and individual health both have different contexts. And a lot of the screaming and yelling about, say, vaccines really has to do with the decisions and context within population health. You're welcome to make your own individual decision about getting a vaccination or not, but that decision has ripple effects on the people around you. So coming up this week in real time, and God only knows what time it will be in post-production time, we have a conversation coming up about whether infants should be getting a hepatitis B vaccine. And at this point in time, the public health argument is that they all should get it, and they all should get it at the time of delivery. And there's a lot of contention about that. But from a public health point of view, testing women to separate out the ones that should have it from the babies that should have it from the babies that don't necessarily need it at that point in time is problematic. And the women and the babies are in the hospital at that moment in time. So from an efficiency point of view, it is far better to treat all of the babies at the time of birth than to put it off to some later date, because the efficacy in terms of population coverage is going to drop dramatically. That doesn't mean that you can't say that there are individual cases where the woman can say, I don't want to have it. You know, I could understand that. But a public health good, a universal thing, I think that makes sense. And that gets back to this same conversation. The facts about the vaccine are not going to change. It's the weighting of that in a policy decision about what's the best way to apply that to a population where we get entangled with the politics.
So one of the problems, I think, and push back, maybe you disagree with me, is that like there's political influences that aren't even related to the issue. So just for example, the British Medical Journal this week, I think, they put out an op-ed trying to explain why fascism is on the rise around the world. And it's the classic argument, right? People's needs are not being met, and so they turn to these increasingly fringe and radical political figures as their savior, right, to come in and solve the problems. And so when you see the British Medical Journal pontificating about political philosophy, I think the average person, and not that there's one average person, right, but just people about their lives, they see that on Twitter, and they go, what the hell are you guys talking about fascism for? Don't you have enough medicine to discuss, right? So, and it could be any topic, but I'm curious how you think that influences these kind of discussions that we're having.
Well, I think it hurts the credibility of the source as we wander further and further afield. The Lancet had two big screeds in the last week about capitalism and ultra-processed foods, which I wound up writing about. And it's fine to talk about ultra-processed foods, and it's certainly fine to talk about how we have a food environment that's created by large corporations. But then to be jumping up and down about capitalism, it just seems to be way off point. And I guess, I'm a boomer, so I'll say they're no longer in their lane. I'm sure there's a more millennial term for that now. But, it goes to their credibility because people say, well, why are you talking about that? There's not,
Yeah. Well, and the thing I'll add to that is, and this is the ironic part, is that these same people will insist, to your point about staying in your lane, they will insist that if you don't have the appropriate expertise to comment on cancer drugs or vaccines, then you just need to shut your face, right? You can't blog, you can't make videos on Instagram, you can't have an opinion on public health because you're a dipshit without the proper training, and so you're not part of the club. And I sympathize with that to a certain extent, because if you're giving people advice about cancer and you don't know what you're talking about, that's truly dangerous. But you can't have it both ways. You can't say you need a certain level of expertise, and also I'm going to lecture you about right-wing politics, right? That's the dilemma.
Okay,
I see.
I see your point there, but to some degree, I think there's a lot of influencers now that are way out of their lane in prescribing this supplement or that supplement, and that contributes its own danger. I think that there's always a place at the public health table for discussion. All stakeholders are welcomed, and you may not weight their opinions one way or another, depending on the situation. I mean, so in terms of determining the efficacy of the hepatitis B vaccine, I don't need the lay opinion to know the efficacy of it. So I'm not going to weight it very high. On the other hand, when we start talking about should I give it to everybody at the time of delivery, then there's a point at which those opinions become far more pertinent to the conversation. So again, our brains evidently like some kind of fixity and certainty to things. And as we say at the end of every episode, there's just too much complexity and uncertainty for a lot of these decisions.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe...
Wait, Josh is going to... I think Josh was ready to say something.
We're not interested in your opinion, Josh.
Oh, he's muted. Unmute yourself.
Yay, that better?
And I thought I was the boomer anchor. But we may have a
PhD
new
chemist,
one.
everybody. PhD chemist.
That button was small. I didn't see it.
Your thoughts, please enlighten us.
If you're talking about lay persons' opinions and expertise, might you have a little problem with the head of HHS?
Well, no,
How could you not?
But I think well that goes to the question, right? Is like he gets to where he is because public trust is so in the toilet when it comes to established science that they elect a guy. They're like, what's the exact opposite of the straight-laced, experienced bureaucrat type of politician? Well, it's this crazy real estate developer from Manhattan. And who's he gonna, right after COVID, he's like, who is the I don't mean this pejoratively, but like, who's the anti-scientific establishment guy? And of course, it's Kennedy, right? So I think that goes somewhat to the point that I was trying to make is public trust has been so abused. Actually, you kind of said this, Chuck. Like, it's been so abused and people feel so... I don't know if dejected is the right word, but they've been so put off by what they've heard from CDC and other agencies under the previous administration that now Kennedy's in charge, right? Which is a very bad thing, I think.
it's a vibe tonal problem. Everything that was said during the pandemic by public health was said with a degree of certainty that was ultimately unwarranted. And that has undercut things dramatically. Again, I mean, and I'm not a big fan of Secretary Kennedy, but he has been very consistent. He is an environmental lawyer, and his interests in health really talk about environmental factors. Why do we have chronic illness? We have chronic illness because of our food supply, because of toxins in the air, because of miasma. So he's been fairly consistent in terms of where he's looking for the villains. In some cases, like with fluoride, with HRTs, there is an environmental component because our environment has shifted so dramatically. We have fluoride everywhere. HRTs are good for coronary artery disease, which is a bigger problem today than breast cancer. And so it's those kind of environmental moments when you have to give them some minimal credit.
It's not that those things are not worth discussing. I think part of the problem is that when someone like him with his background talks about this, what he wants and what's happening right now is you have multi-district litigation that's being filed alleging that ultra-processed food is a public nuisance.
Yes, I saw in California. San Francisco is now going to claim damages.
Right. So laws that were intended to prevent people dumping toxic waste into a public water supply are now being used to sue food companies because and seriously, the plaintiff in one of these suits said, I started eating ultra processed food when I was 16 and now I'm type 2 diabetic and that's your fault and you're going to give me a lot of money, right? Like that's the problem is you have different interests competing and they're all using this label of the science to try to perpetuate their own goals. And this creates a sort of schizophrenia where the public is like, I don't know, is this vaccine good? Should I take apple cider vinegar? Should I ivermectin for my cancer? It's just sort of like everything. The foundation has been eroded, and no one knows what to think. They don't even know how to think about these issues. Well, and that's the challenge.
Bottom line. That's the bottom line. Yeah. Is that the concept of the scientific method has been taught using a frog or something like that. And the bigger philosophical parts have never really made it into our educational system. We have remedial math at MIT.
Wait,
remedial
really?
Math at Harvard, yes.
Oh, my.
At MIT. Let that just soak down.
Yeah, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
And the same at Harvard. Come on. These are the best and the brightest. And they got to have remedial math?
Yeah.
Shoot me.
That's
Hey,
scary.
Cameron.
Yeah.
I think you did not talk about what I think is really behind this, and it's money. It doesn't matter whether that guy really did get non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
From Roundup?
Roundup. He didn't. No. Didn't matter. That was the target back then. Guess what came up next? Opioids. Now, big money, processed foods. There's not going to be big fly swatter being attacked. Okay, this is... the trial lawyers know where the damn money is, and that's where they're going, and they're going to take public opinion with them.
Yeah.
And, that is as true as anything else.
Yeah, they're parasitical. There's no doubt about that. But the question that I think I was trying to get behind, or at least get at, is like, why did they get into a position where now they can abuse the federal public health institutions? Like they have one of their own, maybe the archetype of the trial lawyer running the whole show. And I think they got into that position because of some of the absurdity that we've experienced over the last 5 to 10 years, where, I think like at the beginning of the pandemic, I think a lot of people, they really wanted to know, do I wear a mask? Do I have to stay home for this long? And there was nobody there explaining the thought process of where the guidance was coming from. And of course, we found out later that actually we were lying to you because we thought you were too stupid to understand why we didn't want you to wear a mask for the first few weeks or month or whatever, right? Instead of just saying, hey, we need these for the doctors who are taking care of your sick grandmother, we went on this like, nah, you don't need them, right? And that's just one example. But then you had to come out a few weeks later or a few months, I forget the timeline, and say, no, actually, these are very good, and you're a dipshit if you don't want to wear one, right? So it's schizophrenic is what I'm saying, right? That creates a breeding ground where someone like Kennedy can come along and say they're all liars, the fluoride is a neurotoxin, back to the Dr. Strangelove thing. And then pretty soon people are like, okay, well, that makes sense to me. And here we are. So that's my roundabout explanation. Okay, so Chuck, just final thoughts here from you. How do we get out of this? Is there any way to get out of this?
Well, I think the thrust of what I was saying is that you need to recognize that when we talk about science, it has noun qualities in terms of facts, and it has verb qualities in terms of methodology, and we should be a little bit clearer when we make those distinctions, and that following the science means accepting a level of uncertainty. There's nothing certain in science. That's the basic underpinning of it, is that anything can be proven false. The utility of science is how well it helps you explain and act in the world. And to the extent that it improves our lives, then the explanations make sense. When the explanations stop helping us, then we have to consider what's going on.
Very good. So I guess a little bit of epistemic humility is in order then.
Oh, well, I'm a surgeon. Humility is not one of our breeding points.
I don't know. I think that's a good demonstration of humility to say that me and my fellow surgeons are all egomaniacs.
Well, not me particularly. I'm just talking about the stereotype.
All right. Very well said.
I was always a good person until they crossed me.
You made me act like a jerk. It's really your fault. Okay, so once again, the article is called The Trouble with Follow the Science. This is by Dr. Chuck Dinnerstein. That is at acsh.org. While you're there, click the subscribe tab, punch in your email address. We'll send you the stories we publish. The ones you read are usually the ones we talk about. Thank you for joining us. Follow us on social media at acsh.org on X. Dr. Bloom is at Josh Bloom ACSH. Follow him as well. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. ACSH Matter of Facts, hosted by our colleague Anna Delaski. Go check out her videos and infographics. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.